Welcome to Pivot, a podcast hosted by Katie Day, where we find out how business owners have been pivoting their businesses to stay relevant and successful.
Hey guys, what's going on? Katie Day with the Moving to Texas team. Today we are joined by someone that I admire greatly and I'm really excited to chat with, Megan Eddings of Accel Lifestyle. So welcome, Megan. What's going on?
Hey girl, happy Thirsty Thursday. Always great seeing you. I mean, obviously like the in real life thing isn't happening as much as we'd like, so I'll take the video. Thank you.
I know. I'm excited to see your face. It's been a while.
I put on makeup for you.
You're too good to me, Megan. You're too good to me. Cool. So Megan and I actually met a few years ago, back when I owned a gym. She was doing a lot in the fitness space. And, you know, by chance she came in and worked out at the gym and we went and had a few beers after. She told me about this idea that she had about clothing that didn't stink. You tell the story a lot better than I do, but I was like, as soon as I heard it, I knew that it was going to be something great. And it's so cool now, years later, you know, a few years later, that like, this is actually a thing and it's an awesome, thriving business. And I just love everything that you guys do. And I'm just so thrilled. So
thank you. You know, and it's funny you bring up that story because that's the story that I tell as well. Because becoming an entrepreneur is never something that I thought I would do. And I thought I had this great idea. And, you know, I wasn't telling a lot of people because I had like this fear of what if they wouldn't like it or whatever. You don't want to tell too many people because maybe I wouldn't succeed. But I will never forget the bench that we were sitting at, throwing back the beers at the brewery. And I told you, and you barely, I wish I had a credit card. I don't just like roll around credit cards in front of me. But basically, Katie took her credit card out and just slapped it on the table. And she's like, let's go. I want to buy some.
Take all of my money. Yeah.
Remember, I got in the car and told my husband, I was like, okay, so I really am onto something here. Yeah. If you're throwing your credit card at me, then we're good.
I was in. Like, you didn't even have shirts, and I was like, "Give them to me." You're like, "I don't have them." Yeah, so it's cool. It's been really cool to, like, you know, obviously the concept in your mind had come way before that, right? But to hear it in the very beginning stages of like, hey, like this is something I've been considering, to like all of the, you know, highs and lows of an entrepreneur and, you know, startup, to now, you know, this actually being something, you know, that is a full-fledged business. And I mean, you're hiring and tons of things, right? So let's talk about your business. Let's talk about your background. How did you get to where you are today in like Reader's Digest version? I don't need, you know, what you ate for breakfast or anything.
Totally. I don't even know what I had for breakfast. It seems like so long ago. But I never missed breakfast. Just start there. So yeah, majored in chemistry, University of Virginia, but from Rhode Island, the whole clan's still there. And thought I would actually run a cancer research lab. That's what I wanted to do when I was in college. My roommate had passed away from cancer, and she and I both were biochemistry majors. And I basically just wanted to dedicate my life to finding a cure for cancer. So I worked at the lab at UVA. I worked at a lab back in Rhode Island at Brown. And then I realized one day that lab life's not for me. I remember walking outside. I had my white lab coat on, like the sun's hitting my face. And when you work in a lab, you're literally in a lab the whole day. Like, it doesn't really matter what you wear. It's just a very stagnant environment. And that's not my personality. And so I'm like, well, just went to school for all this, had this whole like, you know, change the world kind of thing. And I can't do this the rest of my life. So randomly met this guy. I believe nothing's random. And he's like, oh, you'd be great in this thing called medical equipment sales. I was like, what's that? He's like, okay, you get paid a lot of money. They give you a car. They give you a phone. They give you a computer. You get to dress really cute, ... And it was almost like everything that I love to do. So that's actually what brought me here to Houston. I worked for Siemens Medical selling, you know, slinging around MRI machines, mammography machines. And I loved it. Like, it just fit my personality perfectly. Was doing that, literally thought I would be a sales rep for the rest of my life. Never wanted to be a manager. The company's always approached me to, you know, be a manager. I'm like, nah, I'd probably fire everybody. It's kind of
not doing it right.
I just throw the Houston hammer on everybody. You're all fired. And I'm like, nah, I'd rather just be a sales rep and like make the money and like whatever. Well, I got married, started, you know, to my lovely husband, Kyle, who you and Ryan know, and he's super into fitness. And you would wear that kind of dry fit, wicking, polyester-based material that we all pretty much wear here in Houston, whether you're working out or golfing or whatever. And I started washing his shirts, and he doesn't smell. Full disclosure, I say all the time, and like whatever, he showers more than I do. And he doesn't smell, but his shirts really smelled. And I would wash them, and I'd put the lavender scented pods in, and then I like I do the sniff test and I'm like, okay, they smell all right. And then he put the shirt on, and the moment he started sweating in it, it's like the shirt became activated. So I'm like, wait a minute, the funk is trapped in the fabric. And so I'm still doing medical, sales at the time, but here I am selling like $3 million MRI machines, and we don't have fabric that doesn't stink. Like, come on now, people. So like in all my free time, like I remember sitting in parking lots of like MD Anderson, like Memorial Hermann, and like researching fabric before I went to my medical sales, meeting. And so I just, fortunately with my sales background, do I like cold calling, like just calling a stranger? No, but you got to do it sometimes just kind of get to the next step. So I just kind of looked up, there's such thing as like fabric nerds or like whatever. And there are, that's not what their business card says, but that's what I have them saved in my phone as, is like yarn scientist, fabric nerd. So I found a bunch on the East Coast. We became friends. We're still friends. And I got an understanding of why our clothes smell, like the exact reason why our clothes smell. And once I figured that out, then I said, all right, time to invent fabric that doesn't stink. So 3.5 years in, it's now patent pending, the Prima fabric in 120 countries. We just launched last August, which I thought I'd be launching in this is like 4 years ago. I'm like, oh, I'll be up and running in 8 months. And then in 1 year, Lululemon will like want to license my fabric. I mean, this is all like in my head. And then, it took like 3.5, 4 years to launch, but I wouldn't change any of it. Like that whole process was just one big learning experience. I wouldn't change any of it.
Well, and I think part of that, as far as like the timeline to launch and everything, I think it's because you have such a high standard. I think that just based on the conversations we had in regards to some of the learning experiences along the way, it was like, the product either wasn't, like the quality wasn't there, or the, things like that didn't match up with what you were looking for. And I think that's really important because a lot of times people like will be willing to cut corners and stuff like that. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I thought like if I'm going to be saying our fabric doesn't stink, I better not be selling a shirt for $74 that stinks. I mean,
yeah, that's that tends, yeah. Cool. So I know, obviously you guys initially launched t-shirts, tank tops, crop tops, stuff like that. And I think that's been really cool. Obviously with everything that's going on now, I want to talk a little bit kind of about how you guys have shifted. But first I'd like to ask, with everything that's going on and COVID and all that, what would you say has been like the biggest positive thing you've seen either in your personal life or professional life?
Actually, I'm going to say professional. The funny thing is they're the same. It's the same answer for personal and professional. So because I've now hired a team like a larger team, mm-hmm. and we still work out of the house, I'm getting an office soon just for mental sanity. I have to. And Andrew now can afford it. Like, that's nice.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that I didn't foresee is that the mission of Accel, no matter what the product is, has always been to inspire, give back, positivity, just, sustainability, ethical treatment of people. It's always been positive for the consumer. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I'm having this team. And for me, it's been a complete blessing seeing people, friends of mine and people, different skill sets, all working together under the Accel umbrella and inspiring and motivating them, and then seeing them do it outwardly. Like when Corona kind of first happened, I basically gave 8 people on my team 50 face masks and just, free of charge. And I said, I want you to donate to them, to someone really in, a group in need. And just what they did with that, I thought, man. So as my team grows, it makes me feel more fulfilled that it's just more people on the street, kind of like putting out that mission of kindness and giving back that I've always wanted the company to do. So it's been beautiful to see. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Okay. So the entire point of the podcast, the entire, premise behind it is pivoting, right? And obviously everyone right now in the business world has seen, they've had to change their business in some way. I don't think there's any business that's still operating how they were in 2019. So 2020 has been a year of change and pivoting and all that. With kind of everything that's going on, how would you say you've pivoted to remain, relevant?
It's been wild and surreal and a blessing. So it was basically, I got to get the date in my head. It was like the Friday, like the 3rd Friday in March, whatever that was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, CDC comes out and they're like, hey, healthcare workers running out of face masks. So grab a bandana, grab a t-shirt, grab something. And full disclosure, I have had a consultant out of Jersey who is brilliant. I'm actually in the process of hiring her full time. And she literally just shot me a text. She's like, yo, she's like, all your fabric is here in Houston and LA. What about turning your fabric into face masks? So it was her idea. And literally within 24 hours, we had a sample. I was already talking to MD Anderson. Like literally, I cold called MD Anderson president. He responded back within 3 minutes. Methodist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nuts. Like, so I knew, the thing in the entrepreneurial world and anything is you think you have a great idea and a great service. Well, it's only going to be great if people want it. I mean, so to hear back from the MD Anderson president, literally within 3 minutes and him copying his executive team, I was like, okay. So within 2.5 days, we had samples made, gave them all to the med center. Within 1 week, we had our first order from Houston Methodist for 9,000 face masks. A couple weeks later, we got a contract and we sold 50,000 face masks to the U.S. Navy and ... As we sit here today, we've sold over 400,000 face masks to the Marines, the Navy, hospitals, universities. Yeah. And then a really wild thing that happened is a friend, the world is relationships. Just be a kind person and work hard. And I always preach that above everything else. And so a friend of a friend works up at this huge healthcare system in Dallas, and they heard that we were making masks. Well, they weren't really interested in masks. I'm like, what? That's all we're, They're like, oh, do you guys make these things called isolation gowns? I'm like, if there's a paying customer, I'm like, I'm not going to be like, oh, sorry, boo, what's an isolation gown? So as I'm on the phone with him, I'm like Googling isolation gown. Make a long story short, I had a call this morning with my patent attorney. I'm submitting for a patent for a design of an isolation gown that I invented. And the hospital is trialing my gown and another company's gown the past 2 weeks. It ends tomorrow. I think we're going to win the deal. It's going to be 500,000 gowns just for that one deal. So I hit up MD Anderson a couple days ago.
I have chills. That's like
literally, it's an absolute blessing. I mean, I was known as the mask woman, which is actually cool because I've been called a lot worse.
Yeah.
So we haven't even had time to build a website or put any information about the gowns online yet, but we will.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. I think that, I know a lot of people across the country that have ordered masks, because they saw mine and they're like, where'd you get that? Do they ship quickly? I'm like, I went over to her house and picked them up, but no, they ship really quickly. Yeah. So I think it's just so cool. Being able to do something that I think I've seen a lot of companies doing that, right? People don't really need clothing right now, right? But masks are something that everyone is really in need of right now. And I think the focus that you guys have on community and, giving back as well is super important. And it's great.
No, and you've been so supportive, you and Ryan, since day one. We're just so supportive of each other because jobs are tough, life is tough, that's great. But the entrepreneurial is just something different because you're not only I'm wearing all these hats. I don't even know what hats I should be wearing. And every day I find out, I'm like, oh, does that hat fit? It sure does. Here we go. So It's not it's just one thing we're doing. You just got to roll with it and stay positive and, don't be afraid to ask for help. I was kind of afraid in the beginning to ask for help just because I didn't want to appear like a moron. But actually asking for help is the opposite. It actually shows that I don't know everything and that I'm, that I need help.
Open to it. Yeah.
Maturity, apparently.
glad you found some. That's great. No, definitely knowing when to ask for help, I think is something that takes everyone a little while to realize. But once you do, it's pushes you along a lot faster. So
exactly.
Cool. Yeah. I think, I just think it's so cool. I'm so I don't want to say proud, but I am just I don't know if there's a better word to use, but I'm just so excited for you and for the company. One thing that you did touch on too was growth, right? So, I know for a while it was you, then you hired Amanda, and now you've got a bunch of people on payroll, I think.
It is, so really cool story. And basically I think it's going to happen, but I'll just put it out there. If you put it out there, it's going to happen. So I had this fabulous boss. Back in my medical sales days, like we're still friends. Like I know his family, like he knows my family, whatever. And he knows about this, let's just say in the next 2 weeks, there'll be a global announcement about another company that I'm starting that I've not been able to release any details on yet. But I need someone, like I need a VP to run it. I can't run it. And so I interviewed my old boss to run it. So basically this week we're negotiating, the contract and the compensation structure, but it looks like I'm going to be hiring my old boss for medical equipment sales to run this division of this company that I'm starting.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's like really cool. And then Melissa, I mentioned I have the consultant whose idea it was to make masks. Same thing, compensation structure. We're negotiating now. I'm going to hire her full time. Yeah, and then today I had 7 people over that a local company purchased 2,000 masks, and they wanted the 2,000 masks individually packaged. So,
of course,
yeah. I'm like, I pay them, and so yeah, it's like managing a team, and I love it. I love it. I mean, the biggest thing is when I hire people, they just have to be positive. They have to be kind, willing to learn. And if I give them a task, I trust you to do it. Like I'm not a micromanager. I give you a task. I expect you to crush it. They do. And if they don't, well, I mean, we'll talk about that offline.
Yeah, we won't go into what happens later. No. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is the culture. And I think, I know that all of the conversations we've had about Accel and kind of your vision for it was that you always wanted to continually be giving back and, ensuring that you're supporting, the organizations that you feel are important to you. And so I love that you're passing that along to the people on your team as well. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Katie.
Cool. Well, that's kind of all that I had as far as questions that I had in my head that I wanted to cover or touch on. As far as any other information or I guess one thing, where can people find Accel as far as social media if they want to order, masks or things like that? Like what's your website or where do they go?
Yeah, and I saw, and I'm literally, as I'm like looking at you, I'm like, oh, this is my first time ever using. So Katie always has like the fanciest technology, anything ever technology, Katie has it. So I'm like, what's this like StreamYard program? So, and asked for my name. So I noticed she put her handle in. Anywho, Megan Eddings. My personal Instagram is Megan, MEGAN, the letter D, 1431. Accel Lifestyle's Insta handle is literally Accel Lifestyle, ACCEL Lifestyle. And our website for children's masks, adult, of course, Katie. Good job. I mean, magic. I'm telling you, magic. Adult masks, children's masks is accellifestyle.com. So ACCEL lifestyle.com.
Fantastic. As far as someone that wants to start out their own business, as far as, someone that's looking to make the plunge from corporate America to entrepreneurship, I know that you've been on many panels, many talks, many podcast interviews, all of the things. What would be your number one piece of advice?
Number one piece of advice. Stop reading inspirational books and inspirational quotes and podcasts. I would say stop doing it, but stop continuously do it. Do it, get the confidence. Even if you don't have the confidence, rip off the Band-Aid and just go for it for the first step. I personally got kind of sucked into all these inspirational things to motivate me and give me the confidence to do it. You just got to take a first step. And a first step does not have to be a big step. Call someone who owns a business and ask them some questions, like just something to take the first step. I'm telling you, it is the hardest part. There'll be challenges along the way, but first step, hardest step, just do it.
Thank you, Megan. I truly appreciate you spending time today. This has been fantastic, as always, to hang out with you, but to hear all about what's going on with you and Accel. So I truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations to you too. I see you guys killing it, slinging those houses. Anyone wants to buy any houses, sell their house, hit up Katie and her husband. She is very responsive and they are on it. So just saying.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate that. I didn't even have to pay her for that plug. So at least not much, so. All right, cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Pivot. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode and follow Katie on social media at MoveMe2TX to stay up to date in all things real estate.